Hello there, I'm Leo Walder for Kit Guru, and this laptop here is the PCSpecialist 15.6-inch Optimus Nebula. I'm just going to start Grid Autosport benchmark running because it takes a little while to load and get on as underway, and it will run for a few minutes, and while it's doing that I can yak on a bit. So this laptop is a Clevo chassis, hence the very generic laptop box there. 15.6 inches across the screen. Its name is Optimus because there have been previous Optimus from PCSpecialist. The name is a coincidence, it's nothing to do with Nvidia Optimus technology, although this laptop does actually have Optimus power saving built into it. Is that running? Yes, it is, good. And Nebula is the new name. I think the previous Optimus was Nebula Optimus 5. So this is the Optimus Nebula. The screen, Full HD IPS panel. They offer an option to upgrade to a 4K panel, which will cost you extra £119. Core i7 processor driving it, which has Intel HD 4600 graphics built into it. You can alternatively have a different Core i7 with Iris Pro graphics, but realistically, anytime you're using the graphics side of things in this laptop, you'll be using the GTX960m graphics, and that is the feature with this new laptop. GTX960m with 2 gig of memory. Now, we've seen 970M, we like it a great deal. We've seen 970M SLI, and it is a beast. 960M, that's a new one on me. Obviously, we've seen it on the desktop side of things, but in laptops, I've not seen this before. So the question is, how well does 960M handle your graphics stuff and in particular games? And if we look here at Grid Autosport, the answer is very nicely, thank you. So we've got the Core i7 driving it along. We've got 8 gigabytes of DDR3 single channel. There is a second slot in the laptop chassis which can put another 8 or whatever gigabytes of memory in, but this is single channel memory. And then we've got all the usual bits and pieces like Wi-Fi and such like, although the spec actually says 811 BGN rather than AC. Other than that, no great surprises. Let's just get through that to my figures. And the battery is a fairly average sort of size of thing. It's inside the chassis, but quite easy to get to if you pop off a few screws. Running Windows 8.1 64-bit. So no massive surprises, which is kind of what you expect with a chassis like this, in that PCSpecialist has brought in the Clevo. They've obviously chosen the one they want, and they basically populate it with the bits and pieces to match your chosen spec of laptop. They ship it out the door. They are pretty much tied into the features of the chassis with a little bit of variety down to the actual components they choose to install. Now, one of the areas where they've gone slightly sideways from where I'd expect is that this laptop has 2 SATA connectors, one in the middle, one over there, and they you'll see when I turn the laptop around when the benchmark finishes, it looks like it has a DVD drive installed. In actual fact, they swapped out a DVD drive for a second drive bay, second drive caddy, which curiously looks like a DVD drive but is not. So you have a 120 gigabyte Kingston HyperX SSD in the middle of the chassis, and then you have a 1 terabyte data drive over to the side using the second SATA connector. That's slightly unusual, not least because it looks like it has a DVD drive, but it does not. The photos make this quite clear. But the peculiar thing with the chassis is it has 3 M.2 connectors inside it, one of which is in use with the Wi-Fi card. A second is unused, which could have an SSD connected. That would be an mSATA SSD. And PCSpecialist has chosen instead to go with the proper SATA connector for sort of balancing cost and performance rather than the M.2 route. And then there's a third M.2 connector, which is to do with this slot here, which again is in the photos, and you'll see when I give you a quick tour, of the, we finished good, of the chassis. Let me just unplug the power connector. It's worth pointing out that we do, of course, at Kit Guru benchmark laptops with the power connected. Sometimes people wonder if we do it with battery. That would be foolishness. And the performance there was average frames per second 64.9, minimum 57.8, maximum 86. So average 65, minimum 58. I think we can say that GTX 960M games very nicely, thank you. I'm not actually sure that comes as a surprise to anybody. Let's just actually brutally shut that down because Grid Autosport's a pain in the neck to close down. It's endless button pushes and are you sure and yes I ams. So the chassis, it's got this matte black rubberized finish to it, which is quite cutesy. It's not as much of a fingerprint magnet as you might expect. I was certainly concerned when I first saw that finish. I've seen it before on a few other laptops and it generally looks frightening in a day or two. It survived quite well. It's looking all right. Touchpad uses the same finish as do the mouse buttons, got a fingerprint reader in the middle. Keyboard is good and solid and the touchpad works nicely. Now, I'm just going to show you something. If I turn the laptop like thus, you can see the lid is very thin. If I just push here on the back, no great force, one fingertip, you can see the screen flexes like billio. I have to say, if it wasn't for that unusual amount of flex in the bottom of the screen, fairly sure it doesn't do it, no, it doesn't do it at the top. It's because the bottom's kind of supported by the hinges, so you can just push against it and it just gives. And I'm sure that's because it's so thin. If it wasn't for that flex there, I would have simply said this chassis, it's good and solid, built down to a certain weight. It's clearly not sort of luxurious magnesium and carbon and God knows what else. But that doesn't give me cause for concern exactly. Just, let's say, pause for thought. Anyway, if we go around here, we have Kensington lock, 2 USB 3 headset jacks, fake DVD drive. It doesn't work. It's not a DVD drive. On the back, we have USB 3, HDMI, mini DisplayPort power connector, 2 exhaust vents. Around this side, we have modem slot, card reader, USB 3, VGA, Ethernet. Now, the card reader is described as a 6-in-1, but basically it's SD. It also supports that sort of slightly peculiar MMC standard that you rarely see. The modem slot is interesting because PCSpecialist offers a choice of either a 3G or a 4G card from Huawei. They'll charge you £29 for the 3G and £59 for the 4G. And I don't know if that's good value or not, or I didn't. Because my thought was, well, if you want to connect your laptop to the world and you don't have built-in SIM card, you'll probably just turn your phone on as a hotspot and connect to that and use that instead. So I had a quick look to see how much these Huawei cards are, and I was really surprised to see that if you go off to Huawei's own website, albeit this is either China or America, it's certainly overseas, you'll pay over $200 for their 4G card plus shipping, and the shipping's like $70. Absolutely astronomical. So actually, £59 from PCSpecialist is surprisingly cheap, albeit I don't see why you wouldn't just use your smartphone as a kind of communication hub. So we've got ports and connectors all the way around, we've got plenty of graphics outputs, that's all fine, USB 3 galore, everything's absolutely jubbly, and a card reader. There is actually almost nothing to dislike, with the exception of this peculiar fake DVD drive that I don't quite understand why Clevo doesn't supply as a drive caddy that's just smooth from the outside and you wouldn't even know that it might have once been a DVD drive. Very strange. But that's crystal clear in the photos what's going on there, and if we put a hand like that, we can just forget all about it. So it's slim, it's light, it has high spec components without being absolutely bonkers and over the top. It's priced quite reasonably at £849, and then around at the back, the exhaust vents. The one cooler handles graphics, the other handles the CPU. The CPU cooler starts to spin up, the GPU cooler starts to spin up when the temps hit 70 Celsius and it tops out at about 73. The CPU cooler spins up when it hits 80 Celsius, tops out at 90. So the components are definitely kept in check. When I was running the benchmark there, obviously directly behind the laptop, I can definitely feel steady blasts of warm to hot air. But the actual chassis itself remains really cool. Around those vents, it's 33 odd Celsius. Other than that, it's ambient temperature. There is no problem whatsoever with this laptop having it on your lap as a laptop, and you can game like that, no problem at all. Quite impressive and actually very sensible. It's one of those situations where it's actually far more usable than if it was dual 970M, £2,000 worth of laptop weighing in at 4 or 5 kilos and all the rest of it. This laptop, it combines a sensible size, sensible weight, sensible form factor, sensible spec. It actually does what you want, and it even has proper battery life. When you loop PC Mark, it'll run 2 hours 43 minutes. You can double that for the real world because that's just endlessly hammering it. So that's 5 hours of real world duties, and obviously depends what you're doing exactly. If you turn the screen brightness down and such, like if you're going through Amazon or watching a movie or some such, you're talking all day battery life. So there is actually nothing to dislike about this laptop whatsoever, unless you have a real thing about the DVD drive or you particularly dislike that flexi screen. So it's not quite perfect, but it's got a heck of a lot going for it. And the key thing here is GTX960m graphics. By goodness me, do they kick bottom. You can definitely game with that chip. Absolute result. Very, very pleased to see it in action. So this is Leo Waldorf for Kit Guru, and this is the PC Specialist Optimus Nebula.